repo blew out to close to a 10% rate. Yes, it's illustrating tightness, but it's not the tightness that we had back in 2019, and it did coincide with a quarter end, so we really don't know the internals, the guts of it. But we don't know who or what. So I wouldn't be too concerned over it yet, but it is something to keep an eye on.
Well, one of the things that people didn't factor in, and you brought this up on the phone when I was booking you, you said, I said, I heard that they were crashing gold and silver because they were going to cut rates up until the time they cut rates. And you said, yes. Tell me about how that was manufactured, this big dump of gold and silver prices. Well, big dump, it's down, whatever. This is all manufactured, correct?
Greg, if you could look at a chart and go back almost 30 years, go back to 1996, when Robert Rubin was the Treasury Secretary, and they had what they called the strong dollar policy. That's when the manipulation really took off. And I mean, you can look at Fed meetings and you'll see a day, 2 days before the Fed meeting, they'll slaughter gold, they'll slaughter silver, because they want to be able to point at the prices and say, gold bad, dollar good. And the idea being, they've suppressed gold, they've suppressed silver all this time because gold is a direct competitor to all fiat currencies. So of course you're gonna try to cut gold off at the knees whenever the Fed. It used to be whenever any Fed governor spoke, you would see a big hit on the price of gold. Now that's slowed down somewhat because it's harder to manipulate now because there's so much physical buying. And I would just address the pullback. I've gotten a lot of people email me, call me, what's going on. People are nervous, and I ask everyone, did you not expect any correction at all? I mean, gold was up 60% year to date. Silver more than that. Silver was as overbought at the peak as it was back in 1980 during the Hunt Brothers episode. So if you did not think that there was going to be a correction, then you don't understand markets. All markets will correct, and that's what we're seeing right now. And I do want to add one more thing. The price drops that you've seen, completely done with paper. I would find it hard to believe that you could find any big sellers of physical metal. And the reason I say that is because it's been hard for big players to make big purchases because it's tight, it's not available. So once they have a position, they're not going to sell the physical gold out of their vaults. What they may do is they'll sell paper contracts as a hedge, but this whole pullback is done with paper, not physical metal.
Oh, that's a big point. Well, the debt's not going down. I mean, they're not paying off. They have no plans to pay off this debt. This is what the Genius Act is all about, correct? And then all the stable coins, and they're going to.
Right.
I mean, this is about finding a new buyer for treasuries, which nobody wants to buy treasuries. Am I wrong?
Right. They have to have the traditional sources have dried up. I mean, look at China. They're a seller now. They were a buyer. They bought huge amounts of treasuries, but they're no longer buying. They've been liquidating. Same with Japan. They're trying to create new avenues of demand. And I mean, they have to do that because otherwise, who's going to be the only buyer? The only buyer will be the Federal Reserve, which, I mean, that is outright and direct monetization.
Well, is it the Federal Reserve? Aren't they really the buyer of last resort anyway? Aren't they the ones? They don't have this in place. They don't have otherwise, if people had liquidity, they'd sell their 2-year treasuries or their 1-year treasury or their 5-year or 10-year. They would sell their treasury bonds, right? If they had, they're injecting the actual money into the system, right?
The Federal Reserve is the buyer/lender of last resort. It's been that way forever. And we've now had couple of Fed meetings where they cut rates. But what happened to the bond market? What happened to the 10-year and the 30-year treasuries? Rates actually have gone higher from when the Fed cut rates. This last one, rates are up 8, 9, 10 basis points since the day they cut. And I've said for a while now that you'll know that game over has arrived when the Fed cuts rates, and all of a sudden you get a real sell-off in treasuries. You get 50 basis points or 100 basis points rise in treasuries with the Fed cutting. And if you go back, what was it, a year and a half ago when the Fed, with their first cut, that's exactly what happened, was that they cut rates twice or three times, I think, and bond rates went up 0.75 of a point to a full point. Bonds are getting bonds. The bond yields are sticky. We thought that the bond vigilantes were gone forever, but it looks like the bond vigilantes are back and holding the Fed's feet to the fire. In other words, they can't just arbitrarily lower rates because the marketplace, that's where the real interest rates are. It's not what the Fed says rates are, it's what the market says rates are. And if the market is saying rates are higher, then that tells you there's risk. Is it default risk? Is it inflation risk? Is it currency risk? It could be any one or all of several potential risks, but the bottom line is it's risk.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's not what they were expecting. They weren't expecting. I mean, this is why Fed has wanted the rates to be cut, because he thought, well, they'd cut the SOFR rate, the secured overnight financing rate, and then what it is now, that the Fed funds rate, it's the SOFR rate. They said they thought they would cut interest rates and then rates would go down 25 basis points, but that's not what they got. They cut 25. They cut 25 basis points and rates went up.
No, and this is the second episode of that happening. It's going to be interesting to see once we get into what the next meeting is, December. When we get into December, it's going to be interesting to see what the bond market does leading up to that and does after a rate cut. And I will mention that December is it's one of the largest delivery months for both gold and silver on the COMEX. So the month of December could be interesting from the standpoint of a failure to deliver.
Yeah, what does that mean if there's a failure to deliver here at the end of the? So the big warning sign is there could be a failure to deliver for both gold and silver, or just gold or silver, or both. What are you talking about?
Well, you cannot have a failure to deliver in one and not have a failure to deliver in the other. I mean, they'll go off. It'll seem simultaneous, but it might, there might be a 15-minute or 30-minute span, but they'll both go off together. And what's been happening, if you go back 3 or 4 years ago, it used to be, and I'll just use the number of 100. Let's say that 100 contracts were standing for delivery on first notice day. By the end of the month, there might only be 10, 20, 30 contracts left standing for delivery. A bunch of the contracts would just roll over and say, just pay me the cash and I'll walk away. Now what you're seeing is they're starting with 100 contracts, and by the end of the month, they're up to 150, up to 200, 250. In other words, buyers are stepping up in the current month, buying the contract, and then immediately saying, I want delivery. And that's not ever happened before until the last couple of years, but it's happening. It's becoming bigger. The amount of contracts that are being added in each month seems to be getting it's getting more robust. And I mean, if silver was super tight in the October month, December is going to be a bigger delivery month. And how much new silver has been added? I mean, just as an illustration, in one day, there were the equivalent contracts sold on COMEX for silver of 1.2 billion ounces. That's one day's worth of trading. The world only produces 850 million ounces a year. So the paper market sold I don't know, a year and 5 or a year and 6 months worth of global production in one day. What did it do? Yes, it hurt the price, but it certainly was not real silver that was being sold. It was papers, paper contracts, unbacked paper contracts.
It, some people would say that what's going to stop them from doing this? I mean, they're saying, people tell me, well, so that they're naked short selling, basically. They're selling something they don't have. They're selling silver they don't have, basically,
Correct.
is what they're doing, correct? So when does this,
Yeah,
when do you think, what's the scenario that will blow this out of the water? Is this just failure to deliver thing that more and more people are
exactly.
just saying, okay, it's the end of the month and I need my silver. Roll it out here on a pallet. We'd like to have it.
Yeah, that's the bottom line is a failure to deliver will end the paper shenanigans. A failure to deliver means somebody owns the contract and they're standing for delivery, yet they're told we can't deliver to you because the metal, we don't have it. When that happens, it's completely game over. And I say completely game over because that will blow up the entire derivatives complex. Understand that these are contracts, supposedly ironclad contracts. And, my past partner, Jim, used to ask the question about what is the value of a contract that cannot deliver or cannot perform? And the answer is zero. So there's going to be a big bifurcation at some point between, quote, paper gold and physical gold and silver also. I mean, the idea that the contract is as good as gold, it's not true. It's not true because the gold doesn't exist to deliver on all the contracts.
That's,
And
I
you've
mean,
got rehypothecation many, many times over.
so wait. So these aren't shenanigans. This is fraud.
Correct. I used the wrong word. I was trying to be nice.
So what they're doing is they're fraudulently selling something they don't have. It's like me saying I want to corner the market on corn, and I'm going to sell 1 million bushels of corn, and I don't have it. I'm just going to sell it. How do they let them do this? How does the CFTC let them do this year after year, yeah,
Well,
month after?
understand what they're doing. What they're doing is they're suppressing the price of gold and silver. And suppressing the price of gold and silver is a good thing if you're a Treasury official because gold competes directly with US dollars. So if you can hurt or dent the sentiment in the gold market, then you're turning people away from the gold market and back into the system, back into dollars. I said back when GLD, whenever it came out, what, 2003 or 4, and then SLV a year or two later, I said that those would be used as a relief valve, a pressure relief valve for money going into metal. Because if you read those prospectuses, they don't have to buy physical metal. They can buy all paper contracts. They don't have to have any physical metal. And it turns out, yeah, that pretty much was the case. And it's my opinion that these cryptos are also a pressure relief valve to the gold and silver markets. People that would have turned and said, I can see big problems with the dollar. I'm going to buy gold. I'm going to buy silver. Well, now they're being given an option. They can buy these cryptos, and of course, they've been pumped up, and you get the fear of missing out, the momentum crowd. And it's my opinion, and I've been clear on this. I believe that cryptos it's a perfect accounting of digital air. They're nothing. But what they did was they diverted funds that were leaving dollars, leaving euros, leaving yen, leaving pounds, and they arrived at the crypto market instead of the gold and silver market. And I think when this whole thing is over, I think it's going to be pretty clear that that's what happened.
Well, somebody likes gold and silver. Otherwise, we wouldn't be pushing what $47 still after a sell-off.
Central
An ounce
banks
for
do.
do what?
Central banks do.
Central banks are big buyers. Rubina was talking
Central
about this.
banks love gold and silver. Yeah, central banks are buying gold and silver hand over fist.
Um, I want to get off the path here and talk a little bit about. I mean, you've been in the markets for a long time. Your business partner was Jim Sinclair. Love him. He died a few years back. I know he taught you a lot, and you were, really heavy involved with his enterprise and his TRX and things like that, which I'll get to in a minute. But you've looked at the markets for a long time, and I don't think. And you take a look at the CV19 shots, and I'm going to bring this up now because we just had information out, and this is at Focal Points, where they say new information. I'll tell you here. Let me just read it to you, and because this makes explain a whole lot. This is Nicholas Helsher. He's a master in public health, and he works with Peter McCullough at Focal Points. And he says, new study finds cognitive impairment is skyrocketing across America. There are other studies talking about cognitive impairment that the CV19 shots have given things like symptoms like Alzheimer's and forgetfulness and depression and forgetfulness and brain fog and all kinds of things. I mean, even Cuomo, Chris Cuomo is on the air talking about he's got brain fog. He's being treated with ivermectin. I wanted to, before I get into this, I wanted to bring this up. I wanted to talk about this. I'm going to get to you in a
Needs
minute
to
on
be
this.
canceled.
Yeah, do what? He what?
Cuomo needs to be canceled. He wanted to cancel everybody who
Yeah,
talked about ivermectin,
but he came
now
out and
he's
said,
taking it.
yes, he's taking it now. He's taking it. That's one of the things he came out. So I want to just kind of bring this. This is a brand new product at the wellness company. It's ivermectin compounded capsules, and it's an 18 milligram capsule. And if you use your promo code, which is USA Watchdog, you get free shipping and 15% off, and that works out to about $3.03 a serving for ivermectin. If you wanted to get 18 milligrams of ivermectin from ivermectin.com, and the reason why I use them because they're very good. Their pills do not come from China. Either does the wellness company. They're made in America. The people at ivermectin.com does testing for purity and also effectiveness. It's pure and it's effective and it's potency. And to get 18 milligrams at ivermectin.com, who are very good, it's $4.35. So if you take a look at this, the ivermectin compounded capsules, one of the other things that's been coming out, and this is peer-reviewed science from the wellness company, they got a ton of it, is how it helps you with your arthritic problems because it's anti-inflammatory. So this may be the new arthritic drug of the future, anti-inflammatory. It also is good for CV19 vax injury. Dr. Pierre Corey and Dr. Elizabeth Eads uses it for that. They're anti-cancer. Tons of peer-reviewed science showing the effectiveness of things like ivermectin. And I don't doctor, but it also binds to spike protein. It's Dr. Pierre Corey's #1 vax injury drug. And there's a lot of people with vax injuries, according to Dr. Pierre Corey. Also, Dr. Betsy Eads. An unbelievable deal. It gets down to $3.03 a pill. 18 milligrams is this. If you go buy this, the ivermectin, which is the same kind, tested, not from China. If you go buy this ivermectin from ivermectin.com, it's $2.90 for a 12 milligram pill. This is $3.03 for an 18 milligram pill. Just remember, if you go on the website, USA Watchdog, there'll be links also in the write-up, in the Rumble write-up. We'll get this out there. And just remember the USA Watchdog promo code, which gets you 15% off. That gets it down to $3.03 a pill, 15% off, and free shipping. Now I want to get back to my guest, Bill Holter. And Bill, I got to tell you, so they have these studies where that we've had people with a national finds cognitive impairment skyrocketing across the country, that people are impaired. And this all started in the rollout of the CV19 shots. Ask Ed Dowd about how there's 6 million people that are now disabled, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers. You have a wrinkle in the society that you've never seen before. For example, you have this state senator, a councilwoman. Hold on a minute. Let me get this right here. Boing. And she's in Montana. Hold on. Let me get this. There we go. Oh, let me get over there. There we go. Here we go. And she says, and she's to her U.S. senator, and this is a woman by the name of Haley McKnight. She hopes that she gets pancreatic cancer, and she hopes he dies. Her U.S. senator, and she leaves that on an answering machine. I mean, the craziness of crazy that we're seeing in society these days is unbelievable. It's violent. It's disturbing. What do you make of this? And you add in the risk that you're seeing. You're saying that we have risk. What do you make of this wrinkle that's being put into society? You brought up the whole Mad Max thing. And man, now you're looking at add on the craziness and the impairment of people. Give me your assessment of what could happen. We've got a lot of working points, and a lot of them are squeaking, needing grease.
Yeah, Greg, I guess the first thing I'll say is what I said whenever it was back in late 2020, early 2021, when you asked me about the vaccine. I said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher, but I do know if you take the vaccine, you are the guinea pig, because there was not enough time to test it.
It was experimental.
They foisted it upon the whole population, and I mean it's pretty clear that people have gotten stupider, dumber. I mean, I could go on and on in that direction. More aggressive. People, things are definitely gone haywire over the last 4 or 5 years, and the question is why. Is it just society unraveling, or is it people are injected with something that it's giving them a problem, giving them cancer, giving them brain fog, whatever? I have no way to know whether there's validity to that study or not. But if I had to guess, I would say, yeah, absolutely. I tend to believe that, because really, what changed over the last 5 years, other than the vaccine coming out?
That's a good question.
I mean, why are so many people, why are so many people getting cancer? Why the big change? Why the higher death rates?
Ed Dowd says that it's from
insurance
the shots.
actuary tables.
Yeah, he says it's from the shots. He says if you take a look
I believe that, but I can't prove it. Like I said, I'm not a researcher. I'm not a doctor. But just using common sense, in my opinion, I do believe it. I believe that the vaccine has caused damage, if you will, to society.
And if we get a Mad Max scenario that you talked about we have this, and you've been talking about this from the very beginning. And, that's what this is. This is a sign, maybe not as bad as it was before, but this is a sign of credit problems. What happens if we get into an intense credit problem? What happens then to your scenario?
Yeah, well, that's just
nuts?
A tremor.
Go ahead.
That's just a tremor. What you're talking about, the repo markets. Understand that there's more derivatives outstanding. There's more debt outstanding under any metric, however you want to measure it. There's more risk in the system now than any time ever. I mean, go back to 2008, 2009. We were very close to a complete meltdown and markets not opening up on Monday morning. And they started hand-wringing over $700 billion in TARP, while behind the scenes, the Federal Reserve created, what was it, 16 or $17 trillion and lent it all over the world. And that's what it didn't right the ship, but it stopped it from sinking. And I would just say, or I would ask you, has anything changed? Has anything been fixed? Did they address any of those problems that we had back in 2008, 2009? And the answer is no. In fact, they've doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down on those same policies. They're trying to fix a credit problem with liquidity. And yes, the liquidity is like a Novocaine shot. It makes things feel better temporarily, but it does not fix the problem. The problem is there's too much debt outstanding on any metric, whether you look at, debt to cash flow, debt to equity. A perfect example is the US dollar. The United States, we're now 130% debt to GDP. And oh, by the way, the dollar is the world's reserve currency. And when I graduated college in 1982, if there was any nation that got to 100% debt to GDP, they were considered a banana republic. So that being said, you could extrapolate it and say the entire world is now a banana republic because they use as their foundation, as the reserve currency, they use something that's issued by an insolvent slash bankrupt entity. And I can say insolvent because look at the Fed's balance sheet. The Fed has negative equity now. They've lost so much on the bonds that they bought from 2008, 2009, and interest rates have gone up. Thus, their portfolio has dropped, and they were operating. Well, I think I looked at it 2 or 3 years back. They were operating with only $65 billion in equity. They had trillions upon trillions, and if you want to count derivatives, they had quadrillions dancing on the head of a $65 billion pin.
Ooh. What do you say to people who say, well, you keep warning, it never happens? I mean, isn't it what the stable coin's all about, trying to kick the can down the road? Is that going to work? The Genius Act, stable coins, the bank producing currency and controlling basically everything with these data centers. I mean, is that what they're doing? They're finding new buyers?
I mean, how is it going to work? I mean, you're talking about things that are completely unbacked versus gold versus silver. I mean, those are God's creations. It takes capital, it takes equipment, it takes labor to create a 1 ounce bar or coin of gold or silver. The coin itself is only proof that capital, labor, and equipment have already been used to create that, versus the dollar itself, versus the stable coins. None of these have any intrinsic value. They're all completely unbacked. They're based on faith. They're based on confidence. And it's the biggest con game in the history of history.
Wow. What would you be? You're afraid of a total credit meltdown. I mean, we didn't get it yet, and you're good to say it's not as bad as it was. It's only about 30% of what it was. So you're good to say it was, but we are getting some shaking. We are getting some warning signs. What would you tell people? How bad do you think it will get, and what would you tell people to do?
I think we will end up in a complete shutdown. Going back to your last question, people saying, you've been saying this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I've been telling people to buy gold and silver since I left. Well, actually, before I left the industry, late 2006, when I left, I had one of the largest gold, silver, and mining share positions, retail positions in the country. And I would just say, if somebody's asking when, if you bought gold in the year 2000, January 1st, or you bought silver, you actually did better than you would have if you bought the S&P and reinvested dividends. But you did it with no risk because gold and silver have intrinsic value.
And what would you advise people to do? I mean, do you think we're close by to a meltdown, a shutdown, some type of hiccup, especially with this government shutdown? Let's start with that. Government shutdown, 14th vote. They're not going to stop. The Democrats will not allow the government to open up. I think they want the whole country to crater. Do you think the government is going to crater with this shutdown?
I don't know if the government will crater, but I think over the next few days it could get very interesting if people are not getting their EBT cards filled up. And understand that all these EBT cards, you put them all together, if you put bodies to that and put them in line, you'd see food lines larger than we had during the Great Depression. And this is during supposedly good times. But there's so many people that have gone online and done whatever on Instagram or whatever, and have said, okay, shut my EBT card off. I'm just going to go steal. I'm going to steal everything I can. I'm going to feed my family, and too bad. I mean, that very That's a very real problem. That's a very real potential, is that you see chaos at your local grocer.
And this is what I'm talking about. Back to the shots. A lot of these people got these. A lot of people got the shots, rich and poor. It was really. I know a lot of wealthy people that, yeah, I'll get the shots. And I was like, why are you doing that anyway? But a lot of poor people got them too. They all got hoodwinked in and mandated and whatever to get these stupid shots. Add that to, cutting off of food, and you got what?
I'm Mad Max. That's where it ends. That's where this is going to end. And is it going to be Mad Max for years? I don't know. It might be 2 weeks. It might be 2 months. God forbid it's 6 months or more, because people no longer know how to farm. The skills are gone. The hunting, farming, those skills are gone. But what people know how to do is get in their car and go to the corner store and buy whatever they want to eat for the evening. But those days are going to be gone.
TRX, I got to talk to you about that. You're a big shareholder of TRX. You're just a shareholder,
Yeah.
but you know a lot about the company. A lot of people would say, why don't you ask about TRX? Oh, TRX, what's going on with TRX?
Well, as a matter of fact, they just announced, I guess yesterday morning or this morning, that they're going to they're going to basically double their production. But the whole thing was they didn't have cash flow, and because they had no production, and they were having to dilute. They've not diluted now in, I think, since 2020. They've not issued any stock whatsoever. They've done everything internally, and they're doubling their production from 30,000 ounces per year to over 60,000 ounces per year. And their, I think their cost of production is in the neighborhood of $1,200 an ounce. So you're talking about a huge, huge cash flow. The cash flow is important because it makes the company stable. But from where I sit, in my view, is that cash flow is extremely important because now they're going to get to drill. They're going to get to find out what's on this property. And I bought this, I bought into this and supported it originally based on the property. Based on, I've had several people look at the 43-101s, and everyone I spoke to, they're good technically as far as geologists or geology, and each one of them told me this is a very pregnant property. So I want to find out, and we will find out with the cash flow, because now they've got money to drill. Is it only a 2 million ounce deposit, or is it a 10 million ounce deposit? And Jim swore up and down he's the one who found Bulyanhulu, which is only 15, 20 miles away, and that turned out to be a 20 million ounce deposit. And Jim felt that Buck Reef and the surrounding zone that we control would end up being a Bulyanhulu or larger. That remains to be seen. But they have found two new additional zones that are barely drilled. But every time they put a drill bit in, they find some gold. So it's promising that it may not just be Buck Reef. It may be the Stamford Bridge and the Anfield, those are the two new zones that they've found in the last couple of years with just surface drilling.
Wow. All right. Just so people know, I am not a holder of TRX. I don't have anything against them. I have no stock.
I am.
I know. I know you are. Just to let people know that I own no stock in any company anywhere. That way, when I ask you about it, I can't be making any money on it. But anyway, I know people wanted to hear about it, and I really appreciate it. It's Bill Holter at BillHolter.com. You have something else to say? Go ahead. Closing thought?
No, my closing thoughts are do the best you can and do it as fast as you can, because nobody knows when this is going to happen. Going back to your question, and I answered, starting in the year 2000, if you bought gold and silver, you would have done great. You could have bought gold and silver thinking the world was going to come to an end. It didn't come to an end, but guess what? You did as well as anyone could have. So do the best you can. Get capital out of the system, because when they collapse the system, the great taking is absolutely it is the plan. Those laws are on the books, the ink is dry, and they're gonna swallow up and bail in the unsuspecting public.
All right. Bill Holter, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com for this quick little update. Well, not so quick, but a fascinating update, fascinating about what's going on. And